Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole. Today, I have a different guest, Paul Wright, my good friend from high school, and the owner of World's Best Media.
It's a
Uh,
conglomerate.
it's a conglomerate. Awesome. Yeah. So, why don't you? Is there anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself, Paul?
Well, I like Mike said, I am Paul Wright, and I'm very excited to be in the show today. I love the idea of this show and the topics that you've chosen and what we're going to talk about today. These are among my favorite things to talk about. So I'm very, very excited, and I'm just happy to, that you included me and asked me to be a guest on the show.
Yeah, you were going to be my second guest, but we had technical difficulties. So, unfortunately, you're number four, but not number four because of any other reason.
Yeah, like I didn't even make bronze.
No.
Like it's just like they give you one of those fucking participation bans. You're just like, fuck you. You throw it back at them.
Yep.
You know, nothing in life is worth doing, Mike, unless you're gonna win.
Yep. That's true.
Everything else is just a fucking failure. It's
Yeah.
like all or nothing. That's how I think about life.
Yeah. No.
That's healthy, right?
Yeah. I think that's healthy. Why don't we could springing off of that? Why don't we dive right into our topic, which today we're going to talk about identity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason I picked identity that I wanted to talk with you about, and I've explained this to you, but I'll explain to our audience. Um, you are better than almost anybody else an example in my life of somebody who is the same person regardless of who you're around. And I've known you since we started high school in 1999, so I've known you about 23 years.
Yeah.
And you have been, you've grown as a human being, but you've been the same person regardless of audience for 23 years, as far as I can tell. I would expect that if we met my grandparents, you would talk exactly the way you would talk if it was just you and me talking. And that that's it's off-putting for some people at first, but I think it's a really admirable quality that you are you under all circumstances. I told you a while back that when I started dating Sarah, you were posting just absolutely obnoxious shit on my Facebook, and and my mother and her mother were Facebook friends with me, and she was like, they're gonna see all this obnoxious shit, and I'm like, that's just who Paul is. Like, he's not being a jerk. He's just that that
Yeah.
guy all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And at that point, so that that was, I think, that was when I made that realization that about you, and that's around the time I started realizing that I wanted that in my life as well. And it's taken me, that it's been about 12 years probably since all of that. And I feel like I'm starting to get to that point where I'm me regardless of audience.
It's a good thing to attempt.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, I, I I think you're absolutely right. I actually take that as a huge compliment. Um, it's a double-edged sword because
Hmm.
I legitimately have trouble turning it off.
Hmm.
Like you say, sometimes just raw Paul,
Yeah.
like just me, I'm mostly id, and it's not always the best thing, but so I actually have a good story that sort of relates to that. Um, my brother is like that as well. Not as much as me, I am, but he definitely has some of that. And I remember one of the jobs I did for many years, full time and then part time, was I worked for this company called the Lyrac Corps, who I've told you about
Hmm.
many times. This was the place of a million just wonderful stories. And it was you could have done a reality show there. It is where I saw some of the most insane behavior in other human beings. and it's also a source of like one of the reasons why I'm as fucked as up as I am, because there was a time period where everyone I that was like in my life was by any definition fucked. Like they all had some degree of mental disorder. Like these were not normal people in society, and it's like that's who I work with. That's who I hang out with. And at the time, my family were all fucking a little bit crazier too. And I remember there was this guy we worked with named Kenny, and he said to Ryan McDonald, who worked with us at Lyric Core a few times, he said, you know, the thing about the Wright brothers is if they don't fucking like somebody, they know it, you know. And he was sort of saying it like as a compliment. It's like if he's like, hey, if Paul and Matt, they don't like that guy fucking knows. They're not, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I like that. Like, I'd rather potentially insult somebody than just go through my life being fake.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think that I have had that issue for as long, but what for part of you know, for part of my a good part of my life, I was more so not myself around my family.
Mm.
And I was, I was always myself, or I was usually myself at work, and and I tone it down at work, and obviously I can't be at 100%. But they know who I am. They have a good sense of who I am. Um, and but it was always more around my family. And finally, something in the last 5 to 10 years just kind of started to shift, and I think it was just them like I think I became comfortable because they were realizing that I am who I am, and to some extent, yeah, I think a lot of it is probably like, oh, he's a father now, and a husband, and like we got him through the hard part. Now he is or like we got him here, and now he's going to do it himself. And I think that has taken over. And so I don't, from almost none of my family. I mean, I think that it is startling to like certain people in my family, like my sister on vacation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I said something in front of one of the the people that works at the resort we were going to, and I just said something about oh shit or fuck or something, and she was like,
Clutch
and,
of pearls.
and I literally looked at her, and I didn't mean it as aggressive as it probably came out, and I just said like I'm done not being me. Like,
yeah, I also think like that's the thing that comes with age. Also, yeah. If you're smart, as you grow older, if you are the type of person like you are, where I think I know this is what I do, and I feel like you sort of do something similar. I'm always I would very much define myself as I'm in a perpetual state of self-improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean I'm actually improving myself, but that's always my intention, even if, like, whatever the thing I thought would help never gets done. You know what I mean? It's always something that's on my mind that I do think about these big things and try to examine myself and my flaws and my behavior and see, hey, that's me and that's okay, and what's something I can work on, and you're just being a jerk. But yeah, I just think it's like kind of like you were saying with the situation with your family. I think you just, as you get a little older, some of the shit, it's like, I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, you have a wife, you have a family, you have a job. It's like, what else is that important? So who gives a fuck what you say?
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also been, they've all kind of given me, for the most part, and I'm talking about, when I say they, I mean the older family members, not the people younger than me. They're still on that walking on eggshells thing. But like a couple years ago, I was at a cookout at my grandfather's house, and I was telling some story, and I didn't say fuck, but it was clear that that was the word I was omitting, and my
Yeah.
grandfather was like, why aren't, like, I can't remember how he said it, but he said something like, why aren't you saying it? And I said, oh, I didn't want to say that in front of you. And he said, do you think I don't think you say it? And I'm like, well, I know that you know that, but that's not the same as saying it in front of you. And he said, I've heard it before, Michael. And so that's what I mean when I say, like, to some extent it feels like it's not like they've given up on me. I don't mean it like that. I mean it in a
It's like
positive.
yeah, like they know you, and it's like, come on, let's be adults about this.
Yeah.
I have always, there's been multiple like confrontations and blowouts because of family members, like sort of trying to tell me not to swear
Hmm.
or like to clean it up. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like, you're really telling me to watch my mouth? I'm a fucking 28-year-old man. Like, not 20. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking like that. It's like, I'm a fucking adult. If you, I'm sorry that these made up words make you sad. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, you fucking baby. Who gives a shit? In fact, I, I remember one time we went to watch the Super Bowl at my Uncle Gary's house. Now, have you ever heard me talk about my Uncle Gary before?
I don't I don't think so.
He's a fucking character, and he's also out of his mind, and but in a very different way. And he actually, he was right in front of his house was where the Sarnayev brothers got into like that massive shootout with the police
Oh yeah. Yeah,
in
with
the
the
marathon
that
bombing.
was that with the boat, or was that
No, that
after?
was after, because they have like this just full on gunfight in the streets
Right.
before the brothers get separated. They kill the older one, and I think Johar was the younger one,
Yep.
who they later found in a boat in another part of Watertown,
Hmm.
like probably just a mile away, if not less. And so he thought kids were like um, lighting off fireworks, and he opens the door and he sees this insane scene, and he told us this. That is so funny. He literally closed the door like, did I really see that? Like a like out of something out of a movie, like a double
Yeah.
take. And he opened it again, and it was there. And he goes, oh fuck, and he just starts running into the back of his house, and he runs into his backyard. There's cops in his backyard, and again he starts screaming, it's not me, it's not me. I don't know why he's screaming that. He dives over his back fence into his neighbor's backyard, like on the street that ran parallel to his.
Hmm.
And he sees his behind neighbor and his son coming out of the house to get in the car, and they're like, Gary, what the fuck are you doing in our yard? And they were like, oh, we're gonna check out what this fucking commotion is. It sounds like a bunch of assholes are lighting off fireworks. And my Uncle Gary's just got this fucking manic look in his face. He's like, no, it's a shootout. There's explosions. And like and everyone, he's like a fucking head case. So the neighbor didn't really believe him right away. It's like,
Oh.
okay, Gary, like he's just a wacko. And like he had to spend like 10 minutes collecting himself and to stop the guy from and his son from going over there. And if you, I don't know if you remember, but they locked down all the towns around that when that happened on Patriots Day.
Yeah.
Watertown, Waltham, Newton, like a bunch of them were like, you're just, everyone stay in your homes. And so he ended up having to spend that whole day with his neighbor. But anyway, that's just an amusing story. He got to meet Peter Berg, the director of Patriots Day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, like my dad and him sat down with Peter Berg for like an hour.
Oh, that's sad.
because it was like a huge part of the story. My uncle just happened to sort of be a part of it, and they wanted to shoot in his street, and they ended up having to shoot somewhere else because one asshole in the town complained. And I guess the rule is like if one person doesn't want it, like they won't do it at all,
Yeah.
even if 1,000 other people said yes. But so we go to this. He's having a Super Bowl party, and I show up there with Brian Blue, who's a guy I went to high school with, who's out of his fucking mind. There's Brian McDonald, also fucking crazy in his own way.
Yeah.
Um, my brother and my dad. And this is all at the height of our drinking. Like we fucking partied hard, like all of us. It was nuts. Like it was so and it was normalized to a degree that it really shouldn't have been because I didn't know anyone who drank normally at
Yeah.
that point in my life. And it's the Super Bowl. Like I'm there to get shit faced, watch the fucking game, watch some cool movie trailers, and I don't give a shit what I say. And so my uncle Gary has his sister, who's a little older, and her husband there, and I'm like, and I love her, but I'm like, Gary, what the fuck are they doing here? They're these old people. They're really religious. Like, what is wrong with you? And he's like, oh no, it's fine, it's fine, and just things go off the rails immediately because Brian swears he says fuck or something, and my aunt's husband Ed, and her name my aunt's name is Camille and her husband was Ed, and Ed, who's just this guy who I remember one time we were sort of like a holiday gathering and he was there and he's got like a pint glass just with some ice in it, and I've seen him just drinking this pint of like water, and I see he's done with it, and I'm like, Ed, do you want me to get you another water? Because I was like getting up. He goes, no, it's vodka. So he was literally just drinking a fucking like pint of vodka.
Yeah.
It was anyway. So that guy goes to Brian. Hey, there's a woman present. Watch your language. Now Brian's a guest in the house, and he's there with us, and he didn't want to be rude, I think, and so Brian goes, "Oh, it's cool. I'm sorry." Like, I'm sure you didn't think that's how that was gonna go, but that immediately, just the fact that he said that, I'm like, nah, this ain't gonna work. And we've been there for like 10 minutes at this point. So I start swearing at something just instinctually, and like there, my aunt and my uncle get bent out of shape about it. Not my uncle Gary, this fucking guy Ed, and I'm just like, fuck off. Like I'm here to watch a fucking game, and if you don't like it, just fucking leave. And it turned into this whole blowout, and we ended up sort of like they left and we all just went to a bar. We're like, fuck you, Gary, for putting us in this shitty situation in the first place. But it was a good example. I was very long winded of I don't fucking tell me to watch my mouth. Go fuck yourself. I fucking hate that. I really do. It's one of my big pet peeves.
Yeah, I have that same pet peeve. It's less so with swearing, but sometimes when people want to police, the conversation or anything, I'm just like if something's bothering you, that's one thing, but like when people are like, oh, we shouldn't talk about that, I'm just like, oh, go away, like don't participate.
If I have some sort of interaction with somebody like where I feel slighted, I really like can't let it go unless I get some kind of closure on it, and whatever, and that might even be just a very polite, like, hey, I'm not cool with what you did, something like that. But when I'm in a situation where I'm uncomfortable, somebody's doing something to me I don't like, I'm incapable of just, sucking it up, essentially.
Yeah.
And kind of that's how I sort of always been, and and like I said, it's a double edged sword.
Yeah.
But um,
So let me ask you a question about with this. I said at the beginning that I've known you since we were freshmen in high school in '99.
mhm.
Were you like this before? Because high school is kind of when a lot of people form their identity and form their they start to get that sense of self. Or have you been that way a while, or did that form around the time high school started?
That is a fantastic question, Mike, because um, high school fundamentally changed who I was,
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally, in a massive way. And earlier in life, I lived in Watertown, Waltham, those places,
Mm-hmm.
and to a kid who's like 14 or 15, we moved when I was in the 8th grade. We moved out to Framingham. That's like 100 miles away, or a million. That might as well be a million miles away. It's sort of a traumatic thing when you've been in this one kind of part of this one area for all your life.
Yeah.
And it was the best fucking thing that could have happened to me. I shudder to think at how I would have turned out if I stayed there,
Yeah.
because I was like bullied a lot in like up before I came to Framingham, and
Yeah.
so I was able to sort of redefine myself, and like I drew a line in the sand of like I'm not going to be taking shit from bullies anymore. To this day, there are people. This is fucking insane, I know, but people from like 30 years ago who did shit to me, be like that. If I saw them, I'd be like, I want to fuck you up right now. I really would love to just fuck you up. Um, it, and it was really, I blossomed,
Yeah.
sexually, because that's when I had my period for the first time.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was a combination of things. It was I was a new guy, and I was able to just sort of be myself, and I was getting older, and I was a little bit more savvy, and um, joining the track team was huge for me.
Yeah.
That really fucking changed me, and that instilled things in me that are still incredibly valuable to this day. Because I really didn't play little league sports or anything like that, so running cross country and running track, it taught me about hard work and not giving up and perseverance and the value of just putting your heart and soul into something. And it made me into a person.
Yeah.
And it was like, even before I went to Marion, that 8th grade year, this is another big one. It was just the people reacted to me so, like, this is my sort of theory. Just the people in Watertown just fucking suck. Like, they suck. Like, if you're listening to this and you're anywhere around Mike or I's age and you're from Watertown, you probably fucking suck, because they're all assholes there. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah.
It's something in the water.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it's that age. Like middle school, I think is the worst age. Like I mean I don't know how much I've told you, but I was bullied really badly in middle school as well.
Well,
And,
let me just
yeah.
I want to hear this, but I think this one other point is interesting that happened to me when I got here from 8th grade, and this carried over into high school a little bit. Was girls were interested in me in a way they never were before.
Yeah.
And and that was, I didn't really know how to handle that at first, but that's really transformative as well. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If like this girl wouldn't give me the fucking time of day a year ago, like what's going on? It's just stuff like that. Just build your confidence and all that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make that point. But
yeah.
So you were saying how much you were bullied in middle school and how middle school's really tough and all that.
I went to Catholic middle school, and I got bullied mercilessly. Um, I'm not Jewish, but my last name is Jewish,
Okay.
as I learned from the little assholes in middle school telling
A
me
lot of
that. And
anti-Semitism.
yeah, lots of anti-Semitism. And you're at a Catholic school. You're the only kid who's a little different. Like we didn't, so you're the one that stands out. You get to be the minority, even though I was Catholic and stuff. So, um, but like I learned a lot about my own heritage because I went and asked about it and found out a bunch of stuff because kids were telling me, these terrible things about, they were holding ham up in front of my face and saying, "What's the Jewish dilemma? Ham half off," and like just giving me merciless shit and like
Fucking
really
kids.
cruel, awful kids. And going,
See, that's why I was saying, like, if I saw certain people 30, like from 30 years ago,
yeah,
I think I just wouldn't do something like that.
yeah, no,
I think some people are just real pieces of shit.
absolutely, that's true. But
But go
I
ahead,
think
sorry.
that's also the peak of your shittiness is middle school. A
Well, I
lot
think
for a lot of people.
I have a different take. My
Okay.
take is you're showing your true colors.
Hmm.
Like you're showing who you are. Like I think yeah, people change, but I think that's just this because like when you're a kid, you don't have as many inhibitions
Yeah.
on when especially when interacting with other kids. So if your instinct is to be cruel and to gang up on people and to be violent, I think you're a fucking scumbag, and there's just something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And if I had to bet, you're probably still a fucking piece of shit in some way now.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
That's okay. Um, so one side note before I finish the story though, the main kid who bullied me the most, he comes up every once in a while on LinkedIn as a suggested friend, and he looks like Thanos with the nutsack chin, and I always find that amusing that he literally is just like such an ugly dude. But so what I was starting to say though was I think that for me, I I spent seventh and eighth grade basically friendless, um, and I had a really hard time figuring out my thing because part of it was I was trying to have friends and I was trying to do things I liked. So like the year that we were in eighth grade, Phantom Menace came out, for example. I went to see that
Mm.
alone because nobody would go with me, and I thought like I'm the Star Wars kid because they all made fun of me for liking Star Wars. And then it was like, well, maybe I am like the Jewish kid. Maybe, like I tried so hard to find somewhere to fit in, some group or identity, and I really struggled so much in that time period. And then when I was going into high school, all the bullies went to different schools. The kids that went from my middle school into our high school were all, mostly the kids who did their own thing. They may have been popular, but they weren't conforming to the group kind of kids.
Well, that was a great thing about Marion, I think, and I know you had a little bit of a different experience than me,
Yeah.
but from what I would recall, I do not think. Well, if I had a bet, I would say you were not bullied in any way compared to your previous experiences when you were at Marion.
Oh yeah.
Because am I? Would you think that's fair to say that
Yeah.
you weren't really like? Would you? Because you might have had some disagreements with people, but there wasn't like a lot of bullying going on in the same way you and I experienced it.
Right. Right.
And
No, I 100% agree.
I think what was great about Marion when we went, I think that was sort of like this golden age of Marion. And because so many people say, "Oh, high school is the worst time of my life. I couldn't get out of it." I loved high school. I had a fucking blast.
Yeah.
But not everybody had my experience. I was fucking the captain of the fucking track team. I was the Mr. Marion fucking high school,
Yeah.
class vice president, all that other bullshit. And but forgetting that, it's there weren't like it wasn't super clicky. Like there were cliques, but they sort of bled into one another.
Yeah.
You know, I sort of had my group, and then bled into your group a little bit, and like my group bled into the stoner group a little bit. As I was saying, there wasn't really like any kind of like stereotypical popular kids. And even the kid who was the very, very successful captain of the football team, who was like the star quarterback, super fucking nice kid.
Yeah.
I didn't really know him really well because we didn't have, he did all those AP classes. And his name is what's Chris McCann.
Yeah.
He's good. He was a good kid. Good kid. His family's nice too. His my brother was friends with his brother, and he was always just like it was like a quiet guy. I remember I had a study hall with him. I think like senior year or something like that, and it was when the football team was doing really well, and I think they would have their jerseys on the game days, and Chris sort of like kind of walked by me one time, and just like sort of slightly like bumped up against my arm, like, and so I was going around that day going, you know, I had this bad rash on my hand, and Chris came down, bumped up against me, and now it's fucking gone.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Chris is magic, but he's magic.
Yeah.
I was doing that.
I don't know if this is the same day, but I remember you in the parking lot after lunch one day, literally to the entire like crowd of people outside being like, "It's Marion's very own Hercules, not quite man, not quite God." And it was about Chris, and I remember
he had such a good humor about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember doing that, but that sounds like something I remember saying something like that. But yeah.
I think going into high school after having the experiences with bullying that I did, I felt like so I kind of rebranded like the way you did, but in maybe not the most positive way. So what I did was I had learned at some point during my bullying that if I made fun of myself, nobody else was going to make fun of me. And so I kind of came in with very quickly with just the most like self-effacing, like jokes about myself, because I just figured that would take all the wind out of it. And it did. I think it helped, because I remember a lot of people like kind of warming up to it and being really friendly to me about it. But what it did in the process, and I didn't really notice it until, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, is it shaped how I think about myself, and I had to start undoing that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I remember my how I view you from high school was, I always thought of you as sort of like a big film buff.
Mm-hmm.
You were I never thought of you as somebody who was even like a quiet kid. I was just like, yeah, Mike's a good dude, and you had your set of friends, and we would hang out every once in a while and stuff, and it was it seemed like you, whatever you were doing definitely worked.
Yeah.
Because I didn't see you as a guy who had any kind of problems, in
Right.
high school, like what we've been describing. So yeah, you seem like a I liked you a lot. Even back then, we always sort of had like we were friends, but we weren't as close as we are now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always just had this. I always respected you, and I'm sure I said some asshole things to you that I've said to everybody. But
but honestly, and this comes back to the identity thing. I never once, like I had gone through a lot of bullying, and when I met you, it was clear because of how much you were the same way all the time with everybody, that it wasn't personal whenever you would say something, that you were just being funny and a bit ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
my very first memory of you is I ran for class president freshman year of high school, and I gave the worst speech ever because I had written my speech, and you had to get your speech approved. So I had written it, handed it in. I got to see the other people give their speeches, and I think that like made me go, oh shit, my speech sucks. And so I tried to wing it instead of doing
Ooh.
that, and it was just the worst possible speech. And I remember you coming up to me after the speech and saying, that was the worst fucking thing I've ever heard. I'm definitely voting for you though. And I didn't
Yeah,
take
I'm
it
sure I did.
personal because it was clear that you weren't like being malicious. You were just being, I don't know
Just
the
being me.
you were being
Just being
outgoing and,
ridiculous Paul.
yeah. I have friends that I definitely crossed the line with. I said, really shitty things, thinking that I was being funny or like, oh, being, just telling it how it is my thing. And we hurt people's feelings where, it's natural that we're going to, if you have no regrets about the way you've behaved in your life, you've got to be a sociopath
Yeah,
because nobody's been
absolutely.
good enough to have no regrets. So,
We're in religion class. So like Mike said, this was a Catholic school and we had religion. And it was really fun because it wasn't like, oh, we're going to jam Catholicism down your throat. It was more of sort of like a philosophical thing, like a
yeah.
life thing. I enjoyed it.
We had
And
an extremely progressive religion teacher who taught us, definitely went off book from what they were allowing him to teach us.
yeah,
He
great
he
fucking
he
guy.
taught us about all kinds of stuff that, I remember learning about Buddhism and Islam and Judaism, and so sorry, I just wanted to give that little bit of context.
I actually ran into him years later at a bar where he was having an Irish wake.
Oh yeah.
It was great. I don't want to say his name just to keep him, but he was a great guy. But so it was that class. You might have been in it actually. And we were freshmen,
Yeah.
and so this is all sit in a circle, and he basically says to us, each one of you give like a constructive piece of. Oh no, we were going around the whole room, and we went to each person, and then everyone sort of was supposed to give them like a piece of like constructive criticism, and so we get to Mike C. And
The other Mike, that's not me.
yes, yep,
For the listeners.
yeah, that was just the nickname. Um, and one of my big fucking pet peeves is people with poor hygiene. And it's like, dude, and I'm not saying this was his thing, but if you fucking smell, if I have to smell you, like, just get your shit together. What the fuck? At the very least, I don't want to have to smell you or look at the grease coming off your fucking skin, you disgusting human being. I fucking hate it. So, this is one of the grossest fucking things in the world. It drove me nuts, and I know it was mean. It was super fucking mean. It wasn't the time to do this, but I had to fucking say something. Mike's acne was so bad, like his face would shed onto his Marion sweater. So imagine that, like a fucking navy blue sweater covered in flakes of acne to the point where it looks like somebody just dumped Parmesan cheese on his shoulders. It was fucking revolting. And we get to Mike, and I just go, see a dermatologist, Mike. That's all I'm going to say. See a dermatologist. And I just said that like 3 times, just nodding my head. And I'm like, I know this is awful, but I can't let this pass. And that was probably the meanest thing I said to somebody because I was calling attention to his appearance. It's like, yeah, I don't know if he could. I don't know. I guess somebody just has it really bad. I don't know. What's your assessment of that?
That's pretty bad. I mean, so this whole game, it was called Coconuts, and it
Yes.
was It was the absolute wrong move for an
A
otherwise
freshman.
great religion teacher.
Yeah, a freshman
He
class.
trusted that a bunch of freshmen were going to be mature and give mature criticism and feedback to each other, and it devolved into chaos. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we are the last year that ever got to play that game.
It's probably a good call on his part.
Because it was every class that in our grade that went through that was it was just an absolute shit show. Because it was not appropriate for freshmen. I got what he was I get now what he was trying to do, but freshmen were not ready. It was just a chance to kind of bully each other.
Yeah, it really was. But sticking to the idea of identity, that's sort of our early formative years. And I thought I'd share something that's, I think there are a lot of people that have to deal with stuff like this right now, and how you deal with it hugely affects your life. And so in my late 20s to early 30s, I had to undergo another really sort of traumatic, fundamental um, reinvention of myself. I was going after a very specific career. I was living my life in a very specific way, and I kept going after this thing. And with everything I had, what I thought in retrospect, there's other stuff I could have done, but hindsight's 2020. At the time, everything I thought, and I literally attempted to be successful in this career for like 10 years. And I'm like, this is who I am. This is gonna happen. Like, and eventually, I just had to let it go.
Yeah.
And that was around the time I also decided I was going to quit drinking, because I never drank in high school at all. Which I think some people, when I told them that, were genuinely surprised by, because like everything we've talked about in this episode, I'm just me,
Yeah.
and that's fucking insane. So people really thought like, oh, Paul's like into drugs and he drinks and shit, like, cause like, look at him, he's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
No, no.
I've gotten that too. I've gotten a lot of people who are surprised when I'm like, I've never done real drugs.
I can see people thinking that.
I mean, I'm bipolar, so like my system is drugs essentially. Like I
I've been
manic
one of those.
state can be like that, but I get 100% what you're saying. Like I've had people, and I'm like, literally, I don't even think I've been in a room. I'm not aware that I've ever even been in a room with like cocaine before. Like I know people think that you do it when you have a certain level of energy, or and I'm like, no, I'm just bipolar, and that's manic. And then you get the depressive, and so it seems like drugs. And I think, not that you're bipolar, but our personalities are very drug reflective.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There highs and lows. And see, with you though, Mike, I would have thought of you now, because I think of you as a very like wise adult guy. I would think you do drugs. You'd be like the guy I would call, like, if I needed a relatively uncommon drug,
Yeah.
like something that is still like popular.
I
But if I
need
want, if I
ether.
want,
I
but if I
need
want,
ether from the 18th century. Can
no,
you
nothing
get?
like that
Oh.
weird, but like Valium or something like that.
Oh.
Like, Mike, I need some Valium, or like something even weirder. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or like if I had Mike, I just took cocaine, and I had like
Yeah.
like
No.
8 beers. I'm having heart palpitations. Is this normal? Yeah, you're good. You'll be fine in half an hour. Like,
Yeah.
or something like that.
You're not the only person that thinks that. I am the worst person to call if you are having any of those issues, because I don't know jack shit about it. I literally my experience with drugs is I had my wisdom teeth out almost 20 years ago. They gave me Percocet. I took a single Percocet. I was puking because I was puking
Yeah.
up blood, I puked like 3 or 4 minutes after I took the Percocet, and I said, you know what? If I can't keep it down, it's not going to do me any good, and I don't want any trace amounts in my system because I had been hearing all the horror stories about people getting addicted, and
Yeah.
that's like literally my entire drug experience.
Um, it's really interesting, and this speaks to what I'm kind of getting at. I'm glad you brought that up, sort of, even though we're joking around. It was very easy for people of our generation, and it's still happening, to get addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
Like, again, like around the time period I'm talking about, like I experimented a little bit, with some stuff. And I know another good friend of mine, I won't say who, um, sort of did the same thing. I'm talking like like a couple of months, you
Yeah.
know, of doing a particular because I got it for it was like for a medical thing, and I forget what the fuck it was. It was basically like an opiate, and this is really before um they were being reckless at that. This is before they realized how reckless they were being and how they prescribed it. And I would say like there was a good several months where like I was addicted to like whatever the fuck they were giving me. I don't remember what the specific one it was. And like the same thing happened with another guy I know, again, who I alluded to before. He went to the hospital for something, and the doctor's like, this. He left with like 30 milligram oxycodons with like multiple refills on it. And I don't know if you've ever done oxycodone. Have you ever had that?
No, I'm not joking. That one Percocet that I took for my wisdom teeth is literally it for narcotics and real like what people use as recreational, even though it's a prescription. Otherwise, everything else I've had has been like Tylenol or IV fluids or and it's always I literally have zero. I have zero drug history.
Okay, so I'll give you some context then. So, because like I said, I've had, this is a long time ago, but if that, yeah, that's definitely what I was taking was oxy. That's because that's what they prescribed. Because I remember I've never had Percocet specifically, and I think I had it once or something, and it didn't agree with me either. Weirdly enough, if you take like, even if you've never taken oxy before, if you take like 5 milligrams, you're gonna be feeling like you're on. It's the best fucking feeling in the world. It's phenomenal. Like, and like 10 milligram, you're fucking rounding Saturn. It's so us. And I've had them before. I had a 30 milligram oxy. So it like a 5 milligram, unless you're like taking these fucking things all the time and you're addicted to them, because that's the problem, is like you get addicted to them really fast, and then you develop a tolerance, and you have more and more and more and more and more, and then what ultimately happens is it's so expensive, people then just go start getting heroin because it's so much cheaper. That's where the opiate crisis has come from. It was people getting prescribed prescription drugs, and then them getting addicted to it. I know I'm saying this because I know he wouldn't have a problem saying it, but my dad, my dad is fucked. Like his back, he's in his mid 60s right now, and he totally brought it on himself. It was like, you're a fucking idiot. He just injuries at work that were unnecessary. Like when I was working with him, I would see him like bend over and pick up some huge thing, and pick it up so wrong, where it's just like all the weight and the pivot point is on your back. It's just like, you're an idiot. Why are you doing this? That's why we have younger guys working here, so you don't have to do this. You're in your fucking uh like 50 now or whatever. What this was. He was in his 50s, and so there were several years where he had multiple back surgeries. He's just at the point. where he's just basically going to be in pain for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And it was he was having like getting like an insane amount of prescription oxys or whatever, insane amount. And I think it's pretty remarkable and laudable that he was just like, yeah, because he could have easily kept going.
Yeah.
Like he was taking these prescription meds for a couple of years, and he just got to the point where like, yeah, this is like not sustainable. Like this is just a shitty thing to be on. And so, you know, he got off them, which is great because that's not an easy fucking thing to do.
Right.
Opiates are one of the most difficult drug. It won't kill you, you know, like if you go cold turkey. I forget exactly how he did it. It's been a while.
Yeah. I have a lot of respect for anybody. Like I've had some people tell me before, like, oh, it's really cool. You know, like that was really smart of you not to get into drugs, and I'm like, it was way easier. It's way easier when you're afraid of something to just never try it than to fight it when you've already tried it and know how being addicted, knowing that it makes you feel better to some extent at least. And I like always kind of find that interesting, and like that people think it's more respectable not to ever do it, and obviously there is a benefit to that, but it is arguably or inarguably the easier route, and I have a lot of respect for anyone who can get themselves clean. I cannot imagine how difficult that must be.
Oh, you definitely nailed it, because like I said, I had like this little period where I was definitely addicted to them, and like I said, they were like oxys, and I remember like I'm like, I just wish I never fucking touched these things in the first place, you know. And it came because of my knees, you know. That's how I got them originally.
Yeah.
And I was doing physical therapy and stuff like that, and but so what I was saying was just like how insane the prescribers were years ago, and I think now they don't. I still think it's really fucked up how they handle it now. But so as I was telling you, I have a friend who he like walked out of the hospital with like the doctor gave him like 30 or 60, I forget how much, of 30 milligram oxycodons with like multiple refills. So like I said, if you've never had it before and you have like a 5 milligram, you're fucking feeling it. 10 milligrams is you're fucking gone.
Yeah.
30 milligrams is you're like coming in heaven. You know, it is like, and it really is. That term is so true. Chase the dragon.
Yeah.
Because it's never quite as good as the first time you do it. And that's what people are always trying to go after, that feeling of that. And I was just lucky. I wasn't on them long enough, and I wasn't taking enough where it was difficult for me to get off them. I just stopped. I went cold turkey, and it wasn't bad for me, because that was around the time that's when, right around the time I stopped drinking. Yeah. And I quit drinking, and this is definitely a big identity thing. And I'm very happy how I live with it now. So like I had a very wild fucking 20s, very, very wild. Drinking all the time. It was insane. Like some of these fucking habits I picked up, and when I was at like my worst, it was just bad. And so it was like 2010. I was like, yeah, I'm like, this is good. You know, I think I have a problem. Like, I think I need to quit drinking, or like, I think I might be an alcoholic or something like that. Now, I want to be clear about something. I do not think of myself as an alcoholic at all. And because addiction, like everything else, is not universal.
Right.
There are guys who they need to go to these fucking AA meetings every day, and it's like a struggle to drive past the liquor store and or you can't go out to parties or stuff like that. I don't give a shit. Like I have never once I really stopped. So like I made the decision to quit drinking in 2010, the summer of 2010. And then I would kind of be sober for a few months, and then I'd go on like a weekend bender, and I sort of sober up again, and then I go on like another bender a few months later. And so for the first like 2 years, it was this on and off thing. I
Yeah.
was sober for a few months, bender, and it was in that period also where I got addicted to those oxycodons for a few months, and uh, so I think that's why it wasn't as difficult for me to get off of them
Yeah.
because I was already in this mentality of like sort of being addicted to something and knowing the process of like, all right, I gotta stop. I know what's gonna happen to me physically, like all this shit. So, and I've heard just horror stories of people coming off of opiates, and I was really lucky. I don't know what it was. I think it was just some perfect storm where it really wasn't bad for me. Like, I went to like a in treatment facility for a few days, not because of the oxys, because of the booze, because you can basically go cold turkey on like any drug, like even heroin,
Yeah.
except for alcohol. Like if you're a really fucking heavy drinker and you just stop, you can die from that. And so this is at like I was really fucking drinking really hard and I was taking these pills. And that's when I'm like, yeah, let me go and like safely do this.
Yeah.
So I went to a facility for a few days in Worcester, and they sort of like they gave me something like the first couple of days, um, so the alcohol withdrawal wouldn't kill me essentially.
Yeah.
Because what can happen is when you go in alcohol withdrawal, you can have seizures. It's really bad. Like
Yeah.
you can definitely die. I know of a guy who he got manslaughter because this guy who was an alcoholic stumbled out into the street. This guy I know hit him with his car. I don't really know this guy. This is like a friend of a friend. Hit him with his car while the alcoholic was in the hospital. The accident was not the driver's fault at all. But when the alcoholic guy was in the hospital, no one knew he was an alcoholic, and he died from the alcohol withdrawal like a few days later.
Oh wow.
And that guy ended up getting manslaughter. The guy who hit him in the first place, which is fucked up to me, because the accident wasn't this guy's fault. But yeah, I forget where I was going with that. I think I was just trying to articulate my journey with like addiction. But
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I think that I think that for anybody who's been through that, that is a formative part of your identity.
yeah, and I'll say where it really things, like I was in a relationship at the time, and weirdly, I remember all my friends were like, Paul's, because they knew I was like going back and forth,
Yeah.
and I had a bunch of friends say to me after the fact, like, oh, if Paul breaks up with this girl, he's really gonna go over the fucking deep end. And it was the exact opposite. Uh, when I broke up with this girl, I have not had a drop of alcohol like since then, and it's almost 10 years. I haven't had so much as a fucking drink, and I don't really count it,
Yeah.
like some alcoholics do, because it's not a struggle for me. Like if you're like Paul, you can have a beer right now, no consequences. Like I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like I just don't want it. I just don't like the way it made me feel.
Yeah.
Like I'm not interested in it anymore. And a great trick I learned. I do this all the time. I still go to parties. I go to bars all the time with my friends. They drink. Everyone knows they can get absolutely hammered around me. It's not a thing that anybody even thinks about. Because I think even my close friends who saw me going through this firsthand knew, yeah, Paul was just like a binge guy.
Yeah.
He just binges, and like that is absolutely a form of addiction. But I wouldn't describe myself at all as like a traditional alcoholic. I don't think about it. It's not something that I. And my the best thing, if anybody out there is somebody who doesn't drink anymore, or you're thinking about stopping drinking, and you don't want it to affect your social life, what I started doing is I love sparkling water. And so whenever I'm out with my friends, I always order like a Pellegrino in a rocks glass with like a lemon twist, because it looks like I'm just drinking a gin and tonic or something.
Yeah.
So no one's like, "Hey, why aren't you drinking?" So people do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's a really good trick I've learned. But yeah, like I said, I'm coming up on it's been like almost 9 years
That's
since
awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know a lot of that, and I knew you were sober. I didn't know all that other details and stuff, and that's really awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. And it was one thing that did suck about it was it also it showed me who my certain friends were.
Yeah.
Um, I I have a really good friend uh who basically just ended the relationship because like he just didn't want to fucking deal with it. I'm like, deal with what? I'm like, I can still go to bars, like we can hang out. And he's like, oh, I'm not your fucking sponsor. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what the fuck does that mean? And it was really shitty. Like, this guy was like one of my absolute best friends, and so that's part of what I was saying before. Is I had to undergo this huge transformation in my late 20s, and where in my early 30s a little bit to an extent, where I'm coming to this realization that this career I was chasing wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going through. I'm coming off a long-term relationship. I'm getting sober. I'm uh, some of my people who I thought were my closest friends are sort of leaving. So my social life's fundamentally changing. Everything changed, and the crazy thing is, it all changed for the better.
Yeah.
Really.
That's really good.
Yeah. So
And
people, don't be afraid of change. Embrace it.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I went. I feel like every decade has kind of been marked with some drastic change, and my 30s have been the best decade so far of my life. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's great.
Hi everybody. We recorded for almost 2 hours, and we ended up switching topics. So I'm gonna make this the end of the of episode 4 about identity, and then next week I'll air the rest of my conversation with Paul on another topic, and I'll get to my question that I ask of all my guests on that episode. Um, so I hope that you liked this episode, and please come back and check it out next week. Also, if you can subscribe and give us a comment, that always helps. Thanks, and I'll speak to you next week.